Hey, what's happening, everybody? John here. I've been getting a lot of different questions from folks at First Baptist and from a few other places about how we're getting our finished product worship-wise as far as the songs go week to week. And so I thought it would be a good idea to take a little bit of time and show you a little behind the scenes of how it's happening from my end. Uh, Basically, Gavin is doing all of the film work for everything that you're seeing, and I'm handling the audio side of things. And so um, let me just show you a little bit about what that looks like, and hopefully this will answer some of your questions that you've had, or if you have never had any questions about how this kind of stuff happens, how a recording happens, or whatever it may be. Maybe this will kind of spark your interest a little bit. But let's just go ahead and dive right in here and show you what's up. So I really think about this in 5 different phases. And right now in COVID-19, phase 1 is pretty similar to what I consider phase 1 of my normal week-to-week work. And what I mean by that is phase 1 is song selection and arrangement creation and musician scheduling. Kind of the nuts and bolts of how it happens, right? So song selection-wise, I spend a great deal of time once I get the sermon series information and all of the individual passages of Scripture in prayer and trying to find songs that are derived from those passages of Scripture. It doesn't always work out perfectly, but a lot of the time I can get pretty close, at least thematically. And so at First Baptist here, we have a repertoire of, I want to say we're at like 35 different songs, and some of those come in and some of those come out. But it's usually somewhere between 30 and 35 songs that we do. And part of selecting that repertoire for me, I've got a few different filters that I use. And if you're on the worship team, you're tired of me going through this probably. But the number one filter for me is when a new song comes out or I hear a new song that someone says, hey, can we do this one in worship? I spend usually a lot of time going through that song individually, and if I can't find a direct correlation with every single lyric in that song to Scripture directly, we don't do that song. So that's kind of part 1 of phase 1 in song selection. But in particular, once I've got the repertoire song and I've got in front of me the sermon information, then I start kind of cross-referencing with our current repertoire. And sometimes I'm like, do we need to add a new song here? And sometimes we do. Long story short, once I've selected the song, then I move into arrangement creation. Okay, so either I select an arrangement that already exists, say like one that you're hearing on the radio or you listen to on Spotify, or I'm kind of creating a new arrangement of the song that I think will fit our context a little bit better, maybe taking out some of the bridges or whatever it may be. And I'm either creating the chord chart or buying the chord chart from, one of these websites that exists where you can just buy charts from. And then I am either recording each individual instrumental part myself and sending that out to the instrumentalists and the vocalists to be practicing with, or I'm using one of those same websites to buy from the professional recording musician their original part and overlaying it, creating mixdowns with an original track or a scratch track for the band to practice along to. So one of those 2 ways, that's kind of how it works every single week. The band gets their part handed to them, and they then diligently and faithfully practice that part, come to rehearsal, put it together with the band, and then on Sunday morning, obviously, we lead the song. Okay, so we go through all of those different things, and then the only thing that's different is instead of scheduling for a service, I'm scheduling each individual person to record. I'm scheduling them for a recording session, okay? So that brings us to phase 2. Phase 2 is the tracking or recording phase, okay? So the musicians come in, they set up, we get the whole session set up and everything on my end, and I record them. And I will get 3 different passes of each instrumentalist or vocalist. And the reason that I do that is because I don't have to just stick with one complete pass of their part. So like let's say they're going through and they're playing the verse, they nail the verse, they nail the chorus, they nail the next verse, they nail the next chorus, then they hit the bridge, and it's just like, they totally fall apart, they miss their part, but they eventually get back on. I don't have to redo that entire thing if I get 2 takes. As I'm going back through editing, which is kind of phase 3, which we'll get to in a second, as I'm going through editing, I can just select that section that they did good on with the rest of it. I don't have to take one whole thing. I call it, they used to call this a Frankenstein take back in the early days of recording, where you would like take a little bit from that pass, take a little bit from that one, take a little bit from that one. Basically the same thing that we're doing now. So I get all of everybody recorded individually. That's another question I've gotten is, are you guys doing this all together? We're not. I just have one instrumentalist come in at a time, and we record. Usually takes, I don't know, maybe an hour, maybe a little bit longer. It just kind of depends. Once they're there, that's usually about how long it takes. But we spend a little bit of time beforehand setting everything up. So, guys, I'm going to switch over real quick to one of my project files. And I'm going to show you, here we go. This is Goodness of God prep. So this is my prep file, and I call it prep because this is all of the instruments just straight up recorded in, and I've gone ahead and I've done what I was talking about, where I've selected different parts from different passes or takes to be the finished version that I'm going to mix. Okay, so I do that for every single individual instrument. These were all recorded separately. Okay, so like when Buddy came in, he was recording with a scratch track and a metronome. Scratch track means just like either part of the original recording or like me on guitar. It's just something for them to be able to play along with, so they're not just playing with themselves on a metronome. So we do that for all the instruments, get them all in here, get them all, recorded along 3 times minimum typically. And then I go through and I select the best versions, like I already mentioned. So that's really the way that works. Then I go through and begin kind of what I think is phase 3 of this. And in phase 3, I do some aligning or some fixing. Okay, so like during phase 3, let me switch back over here. No matter how good of an instrumentalist you are, no matter how good of a musician you are, no one plays perfectly in time with a metronome. You know, I play pretty close in time to a metronome, close enough to where live it's great, it works out. In fact, that's one of the requirements for being on a worship team. You have to be able to play with a metronome. And so all of our people on the worship team at the 850 service here at First Baptist are excellent at playing with a metronome. It's a requirement, and they succeed. So all that to say, though, there are moments where like you're going to be slightly off from the metronome. And in order for a mix in post-production to work, to fit together, everybody's got to be perfectly aligned. So rather than just like killing ourselves and doing so many takes over and over and over and over and getting everything perfectly, that was the old school way of doing it. We now have the opportunity with software like what I'm using here, which is Logic Pro, to have the computer do a lot of that work for us. And so let's just go ahead and solo in here, and I'm going to turn on this analyzer view. We can go through here and see these little, I turn on what's called quantization. So I turn on flex and flow, which is what I just did, and then I quantize it to the 16th note. So what that means is it actually is the computer's going through, and everywhere there's white or gray, it has pulled or pushed the note to be perfectly in time with the metronome. Okay? So and sometimes it doesn't get it right. I still have to go through here and individually on each track listen with the metronome and pull things to where they needed to be. So like, for example, this is a manual edit. These thicker lines mean that I have done this myself. Let's just listen to the drums here so you can hear that they're perfectly aligned with the metronome. Okay, so that we do that, or I do that all the way through for every single individual track, get it perfectly time aligned, and the rest of this is fixing, quote unquote. If there was a take, if I have recorded an instrument and I'm like, I really don't have of all 3 takes or however many takes we have, I don't have them really kind of nailing the chorus really. So what I'll do is I'll kind of like pull parts. I'll either re-record it, which I don't want to do because I like the instrumentalist being the person who recorded it, or I will, like, so we've got a chorus here. Let's say like the lap steel on this chorus wasn't great. I can just go to another chorus and I can just grab it and put it right here. Okay? So that kind of a thing. And, and it actually, you would think that would kind of be weird, but it crossfades it. So it actually works out pretty well. So like this is the lap steel. So you really can't even tell that I copied and pasted anything. Okay, so let me get rid of that. So that's phase 3. We have run through phase 3. And what we do, or what I do after that, is I then go and I start doing what I consider to be the fun part of it. I mix. And so mixing is obviously super important. And let me just kind of show you an auditory example of why mixing is important. I've actually got 2 project files pulled up now. I've got the Goodness of God prep, which we were looking at, and I've got the finished version of Goodness of God here, okay? And so I want you to just hear these aid and bead, okay? So mixing is super important, and hopefully this will show you why. On the prep file, I've got all of the faders set at 0, okay? So these are the faders. They're all just completely set at 0. Everything's the same exact volume. I don't have any audio effects running. I don't have any EQs running. You can see all of these EQs are just completely flat. What we were listening to is just the way it sounded coming off of the mic, just straight up recorded. And that's how it is for all of these, okay, in the prep file. And you can hear, you'll hear in just a second, I'm going to hit the bridge. It's really unclear. It's muddy. It's hard to hear each individual instrument. It's just a ton of noise. It doesn't sound good, okay? So here's the bridge unmixed. Okay, that's enough of that. So, and I had the metronome on the whole time. Sorry about that. So obviously that needs a little bit of work, right? And that's what your post-production engineer does in a studio, and that's what I'm functioning as. And so let's hop on back over here to Goodness of God. This is the finished version, and I'm going to show you the differences here. Let me turn some of this off. I'm going to show you the differences here. I have panned certain things left and right a little bit more. I'm running different EQs on things, like here's an EQ. This is one of my favorites, actually, SSL channel. And this is an EQ plugin that I'm using on the kick. This is another type. This is actually a transient shaper, which is another type of plugin. So all these different things, I'm running to different, what these are called mix buses, where I'm doing like separate compression on things. Let me pull this up for you, actually, so you can see this. Mixer view. That's the easiest way to look at buses. So like I'm running to 3 separate mix buses where I'm doing different things with the drums. One of them is just a dry signal. I've got another one that's like drum reverb. I've got another one that's what I call drum smash, where I'm actually over compressing the drums to where they punch really hard, and I'm mixing that in with the dry signal. Then I've got like a kick and a snare bus where I'm making the kick and the snare compress a little bit more and punch through using certain types of plugins and stuff. So there's that. I'm doing that kind of stuff in mixing. Let me turn this on for you real quick. These are automation edits. Oh, actually, this is the prep file. Whoops. Here we go. Going back. These are automation edits that I'm doing, particularly what you're about to see are volume automation. So you can see, like, this is where I have told the computer manually, like, turn the lap steel down at this section of the song. Or like this is my vocal processing, which is like I use different types of compression, again a little bit of a chorus effect and other things on that processing bus. So I'm having it turn up here, turn up a little bit more later. During this soft section, I'm turning the keys down, turning the vocal processing down a smidge. Having the bass fade in a little bit more on the build section. Those are all just volume automation. And there's tons of different automation tools that I use, like. You can automate anything in any of your plugins, etc., etc. All this to say, this is really nitty-gritty. We're not going to get much further into this. Mixing is really phase 4, and you can see I've even like cut dead space out of like the vocals, for example, and like the keys. If they don't come in till later. You can see this is a fade that I've got here, fading the keys in quickly. I've got little micro fades every time I've cut on the vocals. And vocals, I'm running all types of different things in mix buses. Let's just listen to this real quick, the compressor. So this is the vocals with a bunch of processing done to them. And by processing, I mean like compression and de-esser to get rid of that sound. A little bit of like intonation help in that kind of stuff. So here's the vocals.
Love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me all my days.
So you can hear just like there's that crispness to it now. It's gonna punch through the mix. It fits better, right? And so like here's vocals with background vocals.
And all my life you have been faithful.
Okay? So that kind of stuff. And really the goal again in mixing is to get you as the listener to be able to hear each individual instrument. That's really kind of what I consider my goal, to make everything sound natural, to make everything sound like it's fitting. So, all that to say, let's hop back over to the bridge. I'm going to A-B these, so I'm going to go back to prep here, and I'm going to start the bridge. Then I'm going to stop it. I'm going to let you listen to the mixed version. So here's prep again. Okay, here's the same thing, but mixed.
Your goodness is running out, it's running after me.
Okay, so that's really kind of the difference, and you can really hear it in particular in this breakdown. Let's listen to unmixed breakdown section. Okay, and breakdown section. You could hear like the lap steel was really kind of sticking out there, for example. Oops, that's the build. Here's the breakdown. So like slow fade here on the bass, as one example.
All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able.
Okie dokie. So there's that. That's mostly kind of how it works. There is a fifth phase, mastering, but we really won't dig into that too hard. That basically involves taking the finished product and putting it back into a separate project in Logic and doing some work to kind of bring the overall level up or down and making other things kind of stick out of the mix. But for the most part, that's it on the audio side. And then, of course, it's not over, because when we were tracking all of those individual instruments and everything, Gavin was there behind the camera, or sometimes multiple cameras, getting video footage of it. So then once I have that, I send it over. I have the finished product audio. I send it over to Gavin, and then he starts the process of going through and making the cuts with the videos, selecting different angles and all that kind of thing to get you the finished product. Then actually still not done, because then he sends the video with the audio back to me, and then I overlay it with lyrics. It's just a little easier for us that way, and put the end credits on it and everything, and then finally upload that to YouTube, and then Jeannie takes over and puts it in the playlist for Sunday morning worship, and then it eventually hits your inbox on Sunday morning. So that's kind of the way that we're doing it. Overall, this is another question I've got. Overall, this process for us is to do one multi-track worship song takes a total of about a week, working Sunday through Friday typically. And, some people have said, when I've told them that, they're like, gosh, that seems like a lot of work. It kind of does, but we really have seen the benefit of it, and several of you have told us that you really have been able to worship well with your families at home, and that's really all we care about. That's our goal. And so all that to say, I hope this has been kind of insightful for you. I'd love to answer any questions that you may have about this, about kind of how things work behind the scenes or whatever it may be. Feel free to, shoot me a message or put it in the comments section, and I'll get to it. Hope this has been great for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day, rest of your weekend, rest of your week. And if you do go to First Baptist, can't wait till the next time I do get to see you. Thanks so much. Catch you later.